Yo guys, I'm going to be checking out a video from theOCdrummer. He hooks in on some videos I made about the future of Reforged and Warcraft, back to Warcraft's new patch suggestions that they had put out. Keep in mind that this is almost with no input from Blizzard yet. It's just with the thought that Blizzard could be looking at some of this stuff and we're trying to push them in the right direction. I found this video really interesting. Let's watch it together.
Hi everyone, this is theOCdrummer here, and today I want to showcase a video.
So this is the old Uther. This is how the Paladin looks like in Warcraft.
It started, I want to say, a couple weeks ago when Grubby put out a potential hypothetical balance patch of things that he'd like to see change with the game. Might have even been a few months ago.
Yeah,
some radical changes, some more conservative changes. And then more recently, Remo on the Back to Warcraft team also has done a balance patch. And Neo also, on top of that, has addressed some of the rumors of a patch incoming from Blizzard themselves, confirmed by Mikey Barra on his personal Twitch stream.
Yeah.
And furthermore, something Neo brought up recently in a Back to Warcraft podcast was the potential removal, the rumored removal of Reforged graphics. Now,
I haven't heard of a rumored removal of Reforged graphics, and I think it's unlikely that they're going to be doing that. I did recommend that they're coming out with a better version of classic graphics. So this is the old dated look back when the game was made in 2002. But then the Reforged graphics is unaesthetic, is not a good look for many people. Don't really like how it looks and the performance isn't good. So could there be a middle way where we get new graphics that are like the original, just like Age of Empires 2 and StarCraft 1 have received?
I want to dive deeper into that because I think there's a middle ground solution that could be met instead, that could have both the custom community, the custom game community.
Like a touch-up that's less boxy? Exactly. And if you look at the right side here, this model doesn't actually exist in the game that Blizzard made. By that I mean, of course, we are seeing it now, but this model is not something that you can play with. This is what you can play with in classic graphics. There is a toggle inside Warcraft 3 that allows you to go between different settings. So if you're inside Warcraft 3, go to options, you can toggle here between classic and Reforged, but this Paladin is not one that you can use, and you'll see the new Paladin later. But let's go on.
Very happy because they love Reforged assets. There's a lot of new models to use in terms of, you don't see this on the ladder maps, but there are thousands, potentially at least hundreds of models rebuilt from the ground up that are incredible to use in a custom game environment. But in a melee ladder environment, not so great. And we'll go into that a little bit here, but a lot of the reasons that the Reforged models haven't been great is being able to decipher which units are which in the heat of a battle.
Yeah, that's been a big problem.
So something not a lot of players...
Yeah, when people ask, why aren't you using Reforged graphics? That's honestly a really big part of it. Besides that, I think it doesn't look cohesively together. Sometimes you cannot tell the difference between a ghoul, a skeleton, and a summon. A ghoul, a skeleton, and a beetle. Or you can't tell the difference between a footman and a militia. Militia is, of course, the conversion of a peasant, which is a worker unit, and a footman is a basic melee unit. Well, you can't tell the difference between those at a glance, and even after experience, after trying it more, that is a problem with the silhouette. That is not a gamer problem, that is a developer problem. And we often hear the argument, well, you just need to get used to it. You're just resistant to change. But really, I'm not. I play Warcraft 3, and then I play HOTS, and I play SE2, and I play Age of Empires 4. I change all the time. I do a lot of changing, even though I still play Warcraft 3. I was so ready for a new graphic palette, but not when you can't get used to it and can't see what's what at a glance. Sometimes I look in the corner of my eyes, and I suddenly see a white stool, and I think it's Logan, my dog, because I associate a white shape that is low with my dog, and I want to make sure that I don't step on his toes when I'm maneuvering around in the kitchen. I'm not sure actually why I'm sharing that story. But the point is, sometimes when you see something fast without super hyper studying it, and I'm looking at it, then sometimes your brain does something with it and it's like, oh, that's what it is. But in Warcraft 3, I can always see what's what. Everything is different enough in either the silhouette, the shape, the color, and I know what it is every single time. But in Reforged, a stool is a dog.
Oh, even though there were some forum posts about it and some activity on it in Hive Workshop, is back in 2015, Blizzard themselves actually made HD versions of the Warcraft 3 assets and made them available in the StarCraft 2 map editor.
Oh yeah, they made... Okay, so they made it. So like when people were talking about remaking Warcraft inside StarCraft, that's made by Blizzard, those models.
And I'm looking at the Warcraft map editor now, but we'll actually go into the StarCraft editor here.
This is
take a look at some
StarCraft
of that.
editor. This looks good. This looks really...
And they actually look pretty good. Now,
really
in the
good.
StarCraft context and the StarCraft engine, things are a bit different, and it's a little disingenuous to see what these models would look like in the Warcraft engine in this environment.
You know what's funny? All along we were told, like, I was told personally by devs that I met, by artists that I met that worked on Reforged when they made the announcement at BlizzCon. I was told that the proportions that the creatures and the humanoids had inside Classic were not able to be ported to a modern variant because Uther has no neck. A house is the same shape as this creature, and it wouldn't look realistic and whatever. But like, this is literally their own work, and it looks realistic to me.
Because the lighting's different, some of the ways the particle effects are slightly different as well. The textures
This looks
look
good
differently
and
with
faithful.
the lighting engine capabilities of the StarCraft engine. But what you can see here is the models themselves look pretty good. You know it's a Warden, you know it's a Priestess, a Keeper, and a Demon Hunter. And you go down to the human models, and these models
Blood Mage
also
hair looks a little off,
Archmage,
but
Blood Mage,
mostly looks really, really good.
So all of these models in themselves, in their own rights, look great. They're very easily distinguished from one another, whereas that's one of the pitfalls of the Reforged models. Looking at some of the...
When I say realistic, right, I mean faithful to the original, good silhouettes, very faithful to the original, but still improved in quality, and you know exactly what's what, you know what each one is. By realistic, I don't mean I look outside my window and I think I'm going to see a Tauren Chieftain. You got to make a distinction between realistic and I could see that happening in the real world.
Orc heroes, these models...
Yeah, the wolf is a bit meh.
...look good and keep the fidelity and the uniqueness and kind of style of the original models. And we'll look at those in a little bit more detail in the Warcraft engine as well. And here's some of the undead.
The Dreadlord looks a bit pasty, like he needs to spend a little bit more time in the sun. And I think Arthas's face looks a little bit too much like claymation. But yeah, maybe undead are some of the weakest. But still pretty faithful to the original.
You can also look at this from the
I like Blade Master
gameplay point
decently.
of view, and you get some of the similar perspective of
The
what
Lich
you'd
and the
see in a
Crypt Lord
ladder
look good,
match.
agree.
Units look pretty good. It's not like Reforged where it's very jarring, very different. And the same can be said when looking at these models in the Warcraft 3 engine itself. And this was made possible via some posts this year, actually, in the Hive Workshop. And individuals who I'll credit later, I unfortunately forget some of their names, they ported the models out of the StarCraft engine and into the Warcraft engine.
Is that...
using Blender and a couple other methodologies.
That
to
sounds
actually
pretty
make
hard to
this
do.
Possible. So what I've done is took those models and ported them into the Warcraft engine using the
Nice.
asset manager here and following some of the tutorials
Asset
on
manager.
Hive Workshop. So in here you can see the Paladin, what it would actually look like in the Warcraft engine.
That
Same
sounds
here
tough.
with the
I don't know how to
Crypt
do
Lord
that.
And the Beetles, standard definition on the left. SD Plus is kind of what it's being called Classic Plus on the right. Preserves the fidelity. The colors are bright.
You can
and
kind of see
vibrant
the
and pop.
blockiness
You
here,
can
right?
easily tell what type of model
And this
this
is more
and
rounded.
this extends
Color
onto
scheme
the
looks very
Death Knight
similar.
Here. Very similar model, size, ratios all around. He's a little more hunched
To be honest,
over.
his big eyebrows are kind of
Same with
iconic
Lich.
on the classic. But
Lich looks great in my opinion.
I think New Lich looks
very
better.
Similar, even down to like kind of the facial expression.
New Lich looks better, more evil.
And then the Skeleton Warrior, another model that was exported. So not
Slightly
every
more
model is
realistic
available,
skull
I would
shape.
say probably only I think it's all the heroes and a couple buildings and a couple models.
His sword
I'd
has a couple of
imagine
notches in
Blizzard
it.
went through some sort of pipeline that made
Oh,
this.
keep in mind, these are
scalable to
still
do,
Blizzard models, Shavo.
unless they manually
they
went
ported
and did all
it
these. But in my
from
opinion,
StarCraft
they
to
should just
Warcraft.
hire this team to do these art assets for Reforged. So I want to kind of hop in and take a deeper dive and a deeper look at some of this.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm going to present this just so it's full screen. So what I want to take a look at here
PowerPoint.
is some examples of the 2015 models. We just looked at some in the editor. Compare them against the Reforged models, kind of see what's going on, why it's so jarring and so difficult, and just, quite frankly, everyone just doesn't like them, especially in the melee and ladder scene. I want to look at some of these in the StarCraft 2 editor. We did that earlier, and the Warcraft 3 editor, and then look at some actual battles in the game, and a couple examples of that, and then to top off where I think the game should go, and maybe where this is a compromise right in the middle.
Yes.
Of using the Reforged engine with some of the SD Plus models. So you can see here's a kind of a static view of all of, or some of the heroes.
This is HD Plus.
Dark Ranger at the bottom, also a couple creeps, feral spirits. So these are as viewed in the StarCraft editor. You can see some of the colors are a little washed out. They don't pop as much as the Warcraft 3 engine. Phoenix is there, Orange Bird, Water Elementals, Avatar Vengeance, everything like that. And
look at that. Oh, Infernals look cool. Oh, shit.
Infernals,
T into my
model,
keyboard, no.
Fellhound model, shades of different colors. Skeleton Warrior from the top left, even a Frog Critter. And some of the doodads, which we'll get a peek at as well. And I think the doodads look quite nice in the standard definition plus. As well as, I think, honestly, the Reforged models look great as far as doodads go. And I haven't heard much...
It was not a lot of tea.
Negativity towards the environment itself. It was always, I think, mostly focused on the models and the performance. So the performance of the game did not perform well. You were lucky to get like 60 frames a second. Even
I have other keyboards not as good as
machines
this.
With 3080, 3090 graphic cards. So the models...
Luckily, I have
very
sugarless
clearly
tea.
not optimized. And also the fidelity and the identification capability, being able to determine which units is which, and be able to kind of, in the moment, multiple times a second, be able to tell which unit is which and make the right decision.
Models look fine here. Nothing special. Oh, look at this.
At some of these units, you can kind
Nice
of see
side-by-side
why
comparison.
this is such a problem. You have Classic all the way on the left, Classic Plus, which Blizzard again.
What do you guys think? Which one do you like the best? This is the Classic with that weird pouty face that he has. And then an even more retracted neck on Classic Plus, which is the SC2 model ported back into Warcraft 3. And then Reforged. I mean, Reforged looks like a good piece of art, but I feel like they homogenized many of the faces to such a degree just to kind of have beauty ideals that are standard of contemporary times. So when you look at a lot of the Reforged graphics, you have a lot of dainty female faces, just dainty kind of like perfect, but also shapeless in a sense, like without major distinction. Reforged 1, it is the highest fidelity piece of art, and I think it looks good here. But it's just make Warcraft 4 if you want to make something that different. Classic, that's a classic. And there's something colorful on his elbow and on his arm, apparently. But honestly, I would settle for Classic Plus, personally. Still faithful to the original, but a little bit higher fidelity. I mean, quite a bit. Look at the shoulder here. The shoulder and the chest. Look at it here. It's more realistic, but it's still very much similar to the old one. Yeah, his arm is a piece of wood, apparently. And is made of wood. I didn't know that. I mean, you can't tell here, really, that it's made of wood. This looks like he has a... I don't know, like a spear attached to his arm. Classic skip leg day. Yeah, holy crap. Yeah, he did.
2015, holding up very much to the art style and the direction of the classic art style. And then you have Reforged on the right, which in a vacuum, in a custom game, looks great, but it's completely different from the Classic and Classic Plus design philosophy.
I want to see the Wind Rider.
Amplified even more. Colors get washed out. Gets
Look, this is what I mean. The original, ugly as heck, you know, but you can kind of tell it's female and that it's a character. But the point isn't her face. The point is the tiger. It's just, it's like her classic face. Classic Plus, I feel like, does justice to the original while showing what it is. But then Reforged is just like random dainty face. Do you know what I mean? It's just, for me, this is not the Priestess of the Moon anymore. It's just a girl.
And these units start existing awesome in a vacuum,
it's just too different.
But not so awesome in the context of a Warcraft 3 game. So you can see Priest of the Moon here.
It's just a big gray mess.
Classic Plus, very close together. The synergy is very clearly there. Reforged deviates into some...
Maybe it's a little big on the weapons that she has, but...
other sort of direction. Illidan, not so bad, but still, it's hard to differentiate what color Illidan is. You can very clearly see it, even more so in the Classic Plus model.
I guess it's kind of a bad example because here you can't see his face, so it is not a true comparison. And to be honest, the Blades of Azeroth look pretty badass. So in the Classic, he's always got a black blindfold, and then the colorations... I feel like there's more coloration distinctions, though, when you pick teal as a game color or red or whatever. And it's pretty obvious in Warcraft also because of the red aura around hero units. I wouldn't say here that I necessarily prefer Classic Plus, but I would accept it. You know, in the same vein that I reject most Reforged models in-game just because they look incongruous, they look unfitting, unplaced, anachronistic, a gray mess, lack of contrast. I would easily accept Classic Plus, even if I don't necessarily prefer every version of it. This is a kind of a strange chest. When you think of the true proportions, you can see how it's weird that his arm is this thin here, this thick here, how his waist is this small here, and then kind of barrel-chested here, but in a strange way. This is realistic. It looks good. It looks like, a night elf god, basically.
As the tattoos were also colored, and so was the blindfold, whereas on the Classic version, that's not the case. Reforged, a little bit harder to see here. And the
I think this is one of the worst examples. Maybe not the worst, but one of the worst. Classic. Okay, Warden. How are we going to show that it's a Warden? They made Frozen Throne, came out in 2003. How are we going to show a Warden? Well, she's going to have these big green wings, okay? She's going to have big wings. She's going to have a big hairpiece going basically vertical towards the stars. And these are her weapons. And then they come out with Reforged. They change how her weapon looks. Like it's literally just a different shape, the chakras. And then she doesn't have wings anymore. I like Classic Plus a lot here. But I don't think Classic is bad here, to be honest. Even Classic looks good.
Warden, I think, deviates a lot. So Warden deviates
Reforged
a lot
is
from
lame.
the Classic model.
This even looks like her head can't fit in here. Like, the way that they made this helmet, it looks like there's actually an automaton in because you can't see any piece of the face anymore. This could be a robot for all we know.
Classic and Classic Plus, again, very close together. And these are all Blizzard models. Like, these aren't user-generated. These are all from Blizzard. And then we can kind of look at some of the in-game representations of this.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
oversaturation
oversaturation in the environment, Jonesy,
You can see
in
the
Reforged.
deviation that was taken. Even at the level of the beetles, there's more spikes, there's more legs. It's just a different.
These are
art style,
Reforged
different
beetles.
direction. It's much
I don't
harder
like
to
the
determine
spikes.
and tell at a moment's glance what the unit is. Death Knight.
I don't
again,
think
determine and tell.
a beetle, which is basically an insect, even if he is a king of the Nerubian Empire, I don't think he would outfit all of his beetles with armor. Imagine giving birth to a spiky beetle like this. That would just tear you apart, literally. And if you were gonna like outfit them like Deathwing was outfitted with armor plates, it's like that's way too much work per beetle. Like these spikes feel weird to me.
Tell at a moment's glance what the unit is. Death Knight.
Beetles
again,
are not mammals. Yeah, that's true. Good point. I take everything back.
Although looks pretty good on the right, it's hard to even tell that that's a red Death Knight. And you can really only tell because the camera is
This
pitched
Death Knight is
downward.
bad.
When
Reforged.
it's up, you don't see the red cape, the red shoulder pads. It's just very little red presence there, where on the left side you could see the Classic Plus very clearly.
This is
denoting
Classic
what
Plus
the unit
face.
actually is. Lich, again, very
Classic
different.
Plus.
Floating tomes in the air, much higher fidelity. A lot more going on.
Yo, what's with the
wardrobe,
flying books?
Whereas on
That's
the
so
left,
cartoonish.
sticking to the basics. And Paladin, probably the worst offender in the Reforged makeover. Again, on the left, I think the SD remake of the Paladin is spot on. There's really not much more you need here. And then they went with the model all the way on the right, the Paladin over here.
All right, I have a story to tell about this. When Reforged was received by the community, at first people were very excited because even though the game wasn't out and playable yet, it was still possible to expect expectations. It was still possible to expect changes because it wasn't out and playable yet. It was like, yeah, it's going to come out next year. Of course, some people were pretty high on the copium, thinking that in a year so much can be changed or that direction can be reversed. And maybe I was a little high on copium sometimes too. And especially as time was running out, I realized some things aren't going to change anymore. But there were a number of problems with the game. And I actually sent an email. And then later I met with them in person. And I said, the community is not super excited about some of the changes that are being implemented in Reforged. I always felt confident though. Even if the Reforged graphics aren't going to be to everyone's liking, we can still use Classic. So at the end of the day, for purists, and I don't think I am a purist, by the way, but for purists, we can continue to use Classic graphics if we don't like the new thing. However, I'd like to have the option to do the new thing and to enjoy the new thing. And there was a pretty big and growing list of changes in Reforged or performance concerns or visibility concerns that were serious problems that would have to be dealt with over time, or, as we now know, ignored and shoved under the rug. But when you look at the buzz cut, this was one of the ones that drew the most attention from the community, where they said, this haircut is weird and not very nice. This is the standard Paladin model, you see. So what Reforged did is it introduced many different Paladin models, maybe 6 or 8 or 9 or something, and they had the choice which model to make baseline. So if you're playing a game of Warcraft 3, Reforged, this is your Paladin every time. So this is the one that they chose for your standard ladder experience. And the idea was that down the line, new skins would be added so that you could change to become different looking Paladins. And this could also be a source of monetization. This never ended up being done because the project was binned and canned and neglected. In the original Warcraft 3, it wasn't intended that the Uther, the Lightbringer model, would be your standard Paladin per se, but because they only had one Paladin model and they just used different colors for different Paladin characters inside the campaign, how they designed Uther to look became what your Paladin is. So technically speaking, yes, if you're playing a game of classic Warcraft 3, you're not always playing with Uther because the heroes have different names inside the game. But you're using Uther model because they ain't got nothing else. In Reforged, you're also technically not playing as Uther when you're playing a ladder game. So it makes sense you could have different models. But this one in particular was criticized because it looks too modern and anachronistic out of this time. So I said, one of the major rallying points of the community's dislike for some of the changes has been the buzz cut. And there was a lot of malcontent being voiced about valid topics as well. And while this isn't the biggest of topics, I said it would be maybe symbolic, maybe shambolic, but maybe symbolic, if we at least rolled this back and didn't use this rather unpopular haircut as a Paladin main unit. Even if later we're going to monetize skins, and I say we're, but really I have no direct stake in it. It's them. I should say your, but I felt involved. So anyway, phrasing. I don't know whether I said you or we, but point being, even if you're going to monetize the hero eventually, and you want to allow Uther to come in, maybe not use a buzz cut. It looks too modern and out of place. like people are taken out of the immersion. Change that one, I said, and you'll get a lot of goodwill from the community. And it will also allow for the belief that other things could change if the community feels strongly about it and they prefer something else. Just as a beginning. And I think I wanted to believe it as well, that something that got a lot of attention, that people felt strongly about, could be changed, that Blizzard could listen to feedback and make changes. I think I asked for the community as much as I asked for myself. The handlebar mustache and the buzz cut. And you know what the graphic designer said? But I like this haircut. It's from Dirty Dancing. So I look up the guy from Dirty Dancing. I forgot his name for a second. Dirty Dancing. What's the guy's? What's the actor? Yeah, Patrick Swayze. I see. I look up Dirty Dancing and I think, okay, I don't see him having this haircut. It's a different haircut. But then it was more like, it's the actor from Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze. Okay, so I look up Patrick Swayze buzz cut. I still couldn't see it. So maybe there was another character inside Dirty Dancing that had that haircut. The point is, if that's the reasoning to keep this haircut, just because the designer likes it, but like nobody else likes it, and it is from the 1950s rather than whenever the hell Azeroth was fighting demons, I think that's not a good reason. I find that a weird reason to keep this haircut.
And then they went with the model all the way on the right, the Paladin over here. So some credits before we jump into some of the game. Hive Workshop, of course, continually doing great things on the custom scene, custom models, custom maps, anything you need, textures.
Was it Brian Sousa? Yes.
Did many of the units, models, and textures, the conversion from the StarCraft 2 engine over to the Warcraft engine. Grenersh did the doodads, which we'll take a look at as well. And Arthas981 appropriately did the Death Knight model and texture. So
good job, guys.
Let's jump on into the game. So one of the big complaint points of Reforged models is it's hard to determine if it's a Reforged, what type of unit you're actually looking at in a battle. So what I've done here,
these are Classic Plus.
I've put up against one another undead units of Standard Definition Plus versus Standard Definition units. So they're going to battle each other. I don't know what this guy's doing down here. Get back up. And unfortunately, some of the trees are missing here. I'm not sure why that is. So we're going to go over, and we're going to battle Standard Definition units. And you could tell the units really don't get lost. You can kind of tell which units which in the heat of this battle. Standard Definition Plus versus
Guys,
Standard...
look at the Lich attack, okay? This is Classic Plus, this is Classic, and I don't think it's like super big difference. Honestly, I think if you take... let's say if you take an enthusiastic, motivated studio, even if it's Blizzard, and you give them the task to update Classic to Classic Plus or Classic HD, I think it'll look better than it looks here. Keep in mind, these are just Warcraft models put inside SC2 and then brought back with some clever techniques from several community members to be ported into Classic. I think it would look better than this. I don't think there's enough difference when you look at it from the isometric point of view. But the less difference, the better, if difference means worse. And so I don't think it's like worse either. The animation of the Lich, note how it looks like when the ice bolt appears from their body, and then compare it later to Reforged.
Standard Definition unit.
Looks kind of normal.
I know where
there's
the
a little bit of
I know where the skeletons are. I know
puffy
where my
ice
heroes
cloud,
are. The hero
and then there's a
glows are
projectile.
there. Everything's pretty prevalent.
Note how
I don't see
graphics
any
roughly look the
issues
same
microwing
from
or
both sides.
dealing with Standard Definition Plus units. So basically what we're saying here is
Classic
I
wings
think
look better,
Standard
true.
Definition Plus
More
and
see-through.
Standard Definition units can coexist together. And I think this should be an option going forward if the team has
I'm not even
decided
sure
that
I
this is
prefer
what they wanna
Classic
do.
Plus. But it is acceptable.
So again, I think Standard Definition Plus, they both blend in pretty well together. So we're going to quit out of here.
I think it can be improved.
And what I'd like to do now is look at the Reforged version of this and see why the Reforged units are a problem, and then where I think we need to go, where we could go. So we're going to hop into
Classic
here.
looks better than Classic Plus to you?
And we're going to flip on Reforged graphics, and we're going to retest this map.
Here we go.
So what we're going to see here first
Here we
is
go.
Reforged versus Reforged models, and you'll kind of see the visuals get a little muddy. There's a lot more
Get your
neutral
cross
colors,
out.
not so much like poppy, vibrant colors.
Be gone for me!
But where I think we'll end up is somewhere you might not expect.
The peel portraits already show the fear that we're about to feel.
So here we have Reforged versus Reforged in the left. And again, I think the doodads, the grass, the mines, this stuff looks pretty good.
I think it looks pretty fucking bad. I think it looks pretty awful. The way that the grass turns into soil and then dark areas and back into grass, I think it looks weird as heck.
Like, it's not that bad. Now, some might argue that the classic graphics, doodads, and terrain look better and they pop more. And sure, maybe that's true. But I would say...
I like his attitude on it. He's not too opinionated, but I feel pretty strongly about this.
if I were playing on this map with these doodads and this environment, I'm not really noticing it too much, and it actually looks okay. Another thing I think Reforged does well, but needs a little makeover, is the actual UI. So you'll notice the left side's cut out, so is the right side.
It's pretty nice.
You have some nice decoration on the actual
It
HUD,
can be smaller even.
especially for Night Elf. So I think overall this looks pretty good. Now, when in Reforged, when you're battling one another, I think everyone would agree it's a little bit harder. Like, I can't even tell if this is a skeleton or a beetle. Like, the skeletons and the beetles almost look the same.
Now look at the Lich animation, guys. For some reason, there's some kind of cryogenic combustion happening inside his body every time he does something as simple as an auto attack. There's a lot going on in the Lich's body. Check this out. But
It's very hard to tell.
for an
What is
auto
what?
attack, it's weird. And then the projectile is
you know,
strangely thin. You see how thin it is? The other one had a lot more presence without needing to actually create this explosion. Check
I know
it
where the
out.
skeletons are. I know where my heroes are. The hero glows.
You see
are
how
there.
there's like
Everything's pretty
two lines
prevalent.
kind of intertwined that go
I
forward
don't
to
see
make one
any
frostbolt?
issues microing or dealing with standard definition.
And the new one is like,
It's very hard to tell what is what at a moment's glance.
that's the WoW frostbolt animation. Yeah, and that's stupid because this isn't a frostbolt, it's an attack animation. It's not a spell. It looks like a spell, but
And
it's
I
an
think
auto
this is
attack.
one of the big problem points.
And look at the glow constantly around the Lich.
For the Reforged,
He has so little placement on the map. This cloak doesn't even look like it's flying over the terrain. It looks like it's in the terrain, and then there's like all this cloudiness here that just makes the Lich really hard to perceive.
graphics. Very hard to determine who's who, what is what, and micro appropriately make the right decisions.
And their
I mean,
animations
you can see
look
there's
weird.
a lot of
Look at how the DK is hitting. He just does like his sword straight down without hitting anything.
homogenization of what
He's like
just
slicing
skeleton
besides
warriors
himself.
and- For the Reforged graphics.
Look at the DK.
Very hard to determine who's who, what is what, and micro appropriately make the right decisions. I mean, you can see there's a lot of homogenization of what just skeleton warriors and beetles look like.
Zicho, Wicked Skies.
So, as unfortunate as that is, I think there is a solution to this problem. And I think there is a way for Reforged and for Standard Definition Plus to coexist. And I think that is here. So here
Wait, what is
the
this?
Standard Definition Plus models inside of the Reforged engine.
Okay, so we went from Blizzard-made Warcraft models inside StarCraft 2. Those StarCraft 2 models were ported by community into Warcraft 3 asset editor. And then we changed the toggle to Reforged, and this is how they end up looking.
And this is where I think everybody gets what they want. You have units that pop, units that are meaningful, true to the classic direction in an engine that is actually futurized. You don't have pixelation around the circles of selections. Doodads look great.
It's not as bad as Reforged.
And I think when you actually
The
battle,
bugs look a
you
little
can
big.
tell who's who again.
Keep in mind, these are level 1 beetles. This is supposed to be the size of a level 3 or level 4 beetle.
I know where my beetles are. I know where my skeletons are. Animations look great.
Nothing is as bad as Reforged? That's not true. Kidney stones.
The icons even got a little bit of a makeover. And yes, you can make the icons look a little bit better.
It's
but they're
clearer
HD
than
now.
Reforged. The ground
So I
is still
think
ugly, yeah.
At the end, this might be a world.
Arguable, you can't
Reforged
pee
and-
out Reforged.
Classic fidelity can coexist.
You won't eventually pee it away, that's true.
Now, everyone's going to have their opinion, and there will be the diehard classic fans that only want the classic graphics, and there's no reason to get rid of it. But I think what this suggests is perhaps there is a future where we should allow the Reforged engine or the classic engine,
This looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Standard Plus or Reforged models. Standard Plus can be used in both. Standard can only be used in Classic. Reforged can only be used in Reforged, but Standard Plus can be used in either one. And I have a feeling
Zoinks!
in the Reforged engine, if they got things optimized to where they needed to go, Standard Plus and Reforged graphics can coexist.
Grubby, could you show us Classic Ground for comparison?
Now,
Yeah.
Before we go, I know that who knows if a patch is coming out. Maybe it will, maybe it will not. Up against one another.
This is Classic
Undead
Ground.
Units is so what I've done here is
And you know
I've
why
put-
you don't remember it? It's because it blended in a natural way. The reason you remember the strange neon colors of the grass here is because it's an eyesore. You forgot about this because it is blended more naturally. Nothing stands out too much by itself. You would think, hey, these Cocoa Pops looking like chocolate discs would stand out. You would think maybe that the way that the green and the brown alternates each other would stand out, but it doesn't because it's just kind of blended in a more natural way.
option going forward if the
It's
team has
it's
decided that
clean.
this is what they want
It
to do.
allows you to see what's on it rather than you seeing it. Here,
only
you
want the classic
constantly
graphics,
see
and
the
there's no
terrain
reason to get
because,
rid of it.
first of all, it's darker, it's
But I think
sadder,
what
it's
this
worse,
suggests
it's
is perhaps there is a future where
more poorly
we
blended.
should allow the Reforged engine or the classic engine.
I know
and
it's
then-
road paving. I'm just saying, if you were to say the most critical thing about this and be like, oh, that's weird. It looks like little chocolate discs from breakfast cereal. But you don't think that because it looks natural and normal.
Perhaps they're standard not. But if a patch is coming out and if people are listening, whether it's on War 3
Oh,
Champions
and this is classic
team, Blizzard
terrain
team,
again.
whoever, these models are available. They're made by Blizzard. They're on Hive Workshop. They're not all done, but Blizzard, if you're out there, you can certainly finish up the work. I imagine the community, maybe there's tools now to upscale some of the older models as well. And I think combining the best of both worlds, the Reforged engine and what it does well.
I didn't
and
know
the
these models
classic
were
art
available
direction,
by
what it
Blizzard.
does well, could bring a better future for the game in terms of art style and bringing a fresh new coat of paint to the game we all love today. Have a great rest of your day. If you're not already, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitch and Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
OCdrummer, for the video. Really cool. I'll link his video and channel in the comments. Make sure to give him a sub too if you enjoyed the video.